What's going on, guys? I'm sure you've probably heard about using Ned rigs for walleyes. It works great in replacement of normal walleye lures like jigs and drop shots, but there's a little bit of a technique that you can use to actually maximize the Ned rig's effectiveness for using walleyes, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The main thing to worry about is that we're fishing structure with the Ned rig. The Ned rig's right at home, picking apart specific pieces of structure, rock piles, little humps, points, that little fingers that run off points on shore, even trees. If you find walleyes in trees, just what you're trying to figure out is where or what is holding the walleyes in a specific position and location, and then you can use the Ned rig to pick them apart. So we're casting structure often, or you're fishing right over top of them, but using the Ned rig to really pick apart structure is probably the best way and kind of the modern way to use the Ned rig for fishing walleyes. So I know for a fact that there's a piece of structure in front of me right now and there's walleyes on it. You can motor over it with 2D, use live imaging, or even if you just know there's a piece of structure there, the Ned rig's a great way. I'm using a 3/16 ounce head. You can get it in a quarter or run it lighter if you're fishing shallower, but we're in about 19 feet right now, 15 to 19 feet. And the 3/16 ounce works really well for doing this stuff. But what I'm doing is I'm fishing it pretty slow, kind of keeping it near the bottom. I'm imitating a crayfish primarily. We're fishing northwestern Ontario. It's the same way with a lot of lakes in the region, and I mean even in North America too. A lot of walleyes just feed on the bottom, near the bottom. And when you're fishing specific structure, using the Ned rig's a really great way to slowly pick it apart. The other thing too is if you mark individual fish, it can be a great sharpshooting bait. Right now we're fishing, it's basically we're pretty close to shore, but it drops off a little bit at the shore and then comes back out to a hump. So it's basically just a piece of structure that's just off from shore. And we know there are walleyes on it here. We've caught them here plenty of times. We can see some of them on the sonar imaging. And now I'm just picking it apart, trying to trick them into biting. And I mean, the Ned rig's a pretty deadly little bait. They love to bite it, so it's kind of shouldn't be too difficult here. Yeah. Right where I thought he'd be. Nice little walleye. We've had a heyday with a bunch of these nice fish today. But as you can see, the Ned rig's just chomped. Like when you hook them with these things, these are the VMC heads, and it pins them pretty good. But nice little walleye, we're gonna let him go. I know there's a couple fish there, so I'm gonna get this bait back in the water and see if I can't catch another one. Look it. There's another one. This is just too fun. Like, you could sit over top of these fish them like you'd fish a jig or a drop shot and just try to get them, but we're using these baits to pick structure apart. This is like this is like flossing. Like, you're flossing the structure when you're throwing this thing around. You're getting every little fish off it. It can be pretty deadly. Okay, let's see if we can go 3 for 3 here. I know they're still right in front of me. Actually, this is like a fine-tooth comb. Using the Ned rig's like a fine-tooth comb. You just go over these spots and you just pick them apart. Oh, I missed them. Got him that time. I mean, I'll show you what I'm using, how I rigged this thing, the setup that I'm using, because it's all part of the process. Being dialed in, throwing Ned rigs, they're clubbing it. We're using the new CrushCity soft plastics. These are the Ned BLT. I've already burned through a few of these. I've been fishing them for a while and I like them. The tail's actually really thin, but it has these ribs that bulk up the profile. Like with the Ned, you kind of want a stubby approach, but this you still get a lot of action out of the tail. But I'll show you how to rig them because they're the super TPE. They're the really stretchy stuff. Everybody knows and loves the elastic type baits, and these are just a great Ned rig option. So they come with like a little flat spot on top. This is designed to put your hook through. That way you can rig it a few more times and the flat stuff doesn't get ripped up. There's a little bit more bulky material there. I'm also fishing them on a 3/16. This just depends, like whatever weight you want to throw depending on the depth. If you go lighter, you get a little bit more float, a little better action. And if you go heavier, you can kind of get down and fish it near the bottom better. So it kind of depends on depth and wind. And I'll show you how to rig it. Rigging these elastic type baits is a little bit different than normal plastic, just because it's kind of, if you don't position them right, they'll be really crooked and they won't work properly. So what you want to do is you want to hit it right in the center and make sure that you go through the center the entire way, because that'll prevent it from going on straight. And then you want to come out right about where it's going to be. So these have conical bait keepers. These are designed for holding on these types of baits, the elastic types. And so when you get them over, they stay pretty well. All you have to do is grab it, pinch it on the bottom, hold the hook, and then kind of pull it up. And you'll see it just pops right over. And now you got a straight Ned rig. So that's how you do it. You can catch a bunch of fish. You can glue it if you want. I'll often glue them, but you really don't need to with these conical bait keepers. It keeps them running straight and you can catch a lot of fish on them. Fishing a Ned Rig Jig is a finesse approach. So you want to make sure you pick the right rod. I'm using a 13 fishing. This is a 610 medium light fast. I like the 610 because it's sort of been a trend to fish short rods for Ned rigs, because you get a lot of tip on a lot of control with the tip. The longer the rod you go, the sloppier your tip movements become, and it's just harder to present these baits right. And the medium light, the 610 medium light, you can throw it as far as you need to throw it. Ned rigs aren't really long cast techniques. Like I said, you're kind of just picking apart structure with them. So the 610 is plenty in length. But when you run that shorter light rod, you get a lot more movement out of it and you can really fish those baits the right way. Also, the medium light is, we're running small razor sharp hooks. When you hook them, you pin them. And then the medium light just helps you throw those baits and keep the heads pinned, keep the hooks pinned when you've hooked them. And then I'm fishing it on actually surprisingly light line. I like 6 pound. I run 6 pound to a 6 pound leader. You can bump it up to 8 if you feel a little bit more comfortable, but the 6 pound really lets you fish that bait very well. And also you get some more casting distance. So it's a little better at presenting the bait. You want to kind of go with a lot of presentations as light as you can. Without breaking, because the lighter you go, the better your baits are going to work. And then finally, we're running a 2000 size reel. This is the 13 Fishing AXUM, and that's the Ned rig setup. It's a better one. Oh yeah. Just chomping it. These are vanadium steel hooks on these VMCs. So they're really strong and they're chemically sharp and they're really sharp, but they're very strong. So, I mean, they're light gauge. You can still get them in easy. Penetration's nothing, but they don't bend. So when you hook them, you've hooked them. It's really helpful. I mean, when you catch a lot of fish in a day, these are the new CrushCity soft plastics. I run it in green pumpkin often, or green pumpkin watermelon, kind of this type of color. But when you're running these super stretchy TPE baits that are just pretty much indestructible, you can use them all day, catch 100 fish on them, they're still going to be rocking. You want a hook that'll keep up. So these hooks are sweet. They hook them, they pin them. They're small enough that they're easy to get in and they keep them hooked. So it's a good program. You don't have to be right on top of them. You can just go through, shake it about, mark some fish, get over them. Like if you know there's a piece of structure that's holding walleyes, you don't need electronics. You just need to fire some casts, make a lot of casts, fish it pretty slow, and just pick it apart. Oh yeah. Perfect. Shield walleye right there on the Ned rig. If you guys want to do this, it's pretty simple. Just make sure you use the right weight head, you rig the plastic on properly, you use the proper rod, proper line, reel, set it up right for catching these fish, and then pick apart structure like a fine-tooth comb. You know where the fish are, you know where to find them, and all you got to do is catch them.